What's going on, everybody? So behind me is my 2021 CRF250F. As you know, I absolutely love the bike. They released a full new trail bike lineup back in 2019, and unfortunately, it just never gained much aftermarket support. Believe it or not, this bike is actually really popular overseas, especially in Brazil, where it originated and it's actually built. So there is one company in particular that you'll notice that I've got a few different parts from on the bike, and that is Corona Racing, not the virus. So I guess we'll go from the top down. We have front and center the billet triple clamp setup with riser. This thing is freaking awesome. For me, the added height is essential. Got some really long arms, so bringing these things up closer to me is always a plus, and you can actually get them farther forward because there's a couple of different positions here. I can only hope someday in the future that they make some lowers to match, because that would just look awesome. Moving down, the next thing we have is a full billet aluminum motor mount set. So as you can see, we have the top hanger right here, the one in the front, and the one in the rear here. Now you see some of this other stuff that's on there. I'll be doing a separate video on that. For now, we're just focusing on the Corona products. Down at the bottom, so they make the adjustable linkage for this bike, so you can actually raise or lower or even have the standard ride height with that one linkage. So it's super versatile. For me, obviously I have it in the lifted position. Now let me clear this up. You cannot run the HyperLite extended clevis with the new shock, but you still can run the linkage. So we have that. I'd like to think that it gives almost an inch, because it really does balance things out, because as you know, in the front we have a lift as well. But if you are on the shorter side and you want to lower it even more, I don't recommend it, but you do have that option. You just kind of start messing with the ground clearance and it's already a pretty low bike as it is. Thankfully, my good friends over at HyperLite Moto are making it their mission to actually stock parts for these bikes, and I think we've got some more goodies in this box, so let's get it opened up. Whew. Little wardrobe change here. So we've got a new spread of parts here. Starting out on the left, we have a full billet rear brake lever. This thing is super trick. It's got like a 6-shooter revolver look in the back, and overall this thing is a nice solid part that's going to offer some more durability and more peace of mind when we're out doing these gnarly rides out here. Moving on, we have a rear rotor guard. This is awesome. So glad that somebody made it a point to make one of these for these bikes, because these things are crucial out here. You do not want to get your rotor chewed up on the rocks and all bent up, and it can lead to a really messed up day. So this actually replaces the factory caliper bracket, and this fin down here is what protects the rotor. As you've seen in the past few videos, we ride these things like full-on hard enduro bikes, and this is going to offer some much needed protection. Next, we have the billet chain adjusters in red anodized. Now this isn't so much a functional part, but it just looks damn good, and that's just going to match everything else that we have on the bike and just make things pop. Moving down the line, we have a billet shifter, and this thing is a really cool design. It's kind of got a blocky, squared off look, has some dimples though for grip. You may run into some clearance issues with the skid plate and the engine guard. We'll get into that later, but we will still install it to see how it looks. And on the very end, we have 2 different engine plugs for the side. Unfortunately, one's going to be covered, but this one, the smaller one, will be shown off. So that is the new spread of Corona parts. I don't want to keep looking at them. Let's get these things on the bike. So Scott over at HyperLite told me that some people were having problems installing the brake lever. There's one bolt in the rear that you have to remove. I just so happen to bring my spring puller with me, which is a super useful tool, but you can use a pair of pliers or a pick, whatever you can get wrapped around the one end of the spring to get that pulled off. I went ahead and loosened my master cylinder to make it easier to gain access to the cotter pin that's behind that on that hanger. You're gonna need to remove that. It can be a little tricky, just take your time. Pop that off, and the brake lever is weaved into the frame there. I find it easier to bring it out the front, and now we are ready to install the Corona lever. So this is a traditional over-the-top lever. I do recommend adding some grease at the point where it inserts there. This is just held on by one large cotter pin in the back. So insert that through the bottom or the top, and then bend the ends over so it doesn't come out. Followed by the spring, which there's actually some adjustment in that. As long as the lock nut's tight, that's really all that matters. And then the master cylinder attaches the same way. For the rear rotor guard, like I said, it replaces the factory caliper bracket, so you'll have to take the wheel off to remove the factory bracket. You'll need to transfer the one stud over from the stock one to the new one. You also transfer that rubber boot, and I do recommend re-greasing the pins. There's also that brake pad retainer clip that you'll have to transfer over to the new bracket. After that, go ahead and slide the two together, and then from there, just assemble it as it was stock. Well guys, that wraps up the install. I gotta say, my favorite part by far is that rear rotor guard. That thing is gonna be nice in those rocky sections, and I can really beat this thing up and not have to worry about destroying my rotor. There are a couple important things that I need to mention. If you're gonna run this brake lever, you will not be able to run the anchor guard on this side. And although I really do like the design of this, especially with this folding tip, it is just a little bit too far in for my taste, especially with this skid plate. Scratch that, I actually got the brake lever to fit. So a lot of billet aluminum stuff is very rigid and doesn't like to be bent. But I was able to torque on it a little bit, get some pressure, and I just bent it out enough to where I get a lot of real estate on that foot pad now. So I went ahead and trimmed this side guard too. If you take a little bit of time, you can match the curvature of the lever, and honestly, just for an eyeball job, I think I did pretty damn good. So I'm happy with that, and we are going to run this. I love the way this thing looks. I love how it's a traditional over-the-top style. The stock one's weird. It wraps all the way back in there, and it sticks out pretty far, so it's prone to getting ripped off and bent. There's also a hole down here to where we can take a wire and actually wire tie it to the skid plate. That way sticks and debris and things that you're riding over won't bend the lever out. Apart from that, the wheel adjusters turned out sick. I really like the way those look. And I'll also mention, if you're going to run this shifter, be sure that you don't have the engine guard or the skid plate, because it's just not going to work out. That plug is sweet, and overall we got a lot of trick parts on this thing, more than I could have ever imagined, because like I said, there is not much aftermarket support for these bikes. So big thank you to Corona and Scott over at HyperLite for supplying all this stuff. Drop it down in the comments. What is your favorite Corona part on this bike? Like I said, I still got to go with the triple clamp, man. That thing just looks amazing. Obviously, with these aluminum parts, we are shedding weight as well, and Scott's personal bike, I don't remember, I think it was almost 20 pounds lighter than a stock 250F, so it's definitely a big difference, and this stuff adds up. But once again, thanks for watching. Always remember to live free, adventure daily, and we'll see you in the next one.